Hi, Sabina. Welcome to 11 Questions.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
What's your definition of an ideal day?
Ooh, an ideal day. I love spending time with my family. We like to have breakfast together and just kind of get our day started that way. And then I do love my alone time too, especially for writing. The way my day flows now has changed a lot since my children are older and they're off to work and stuff. So after everyone's gone, I usually sit down and write for a few hours. Of course, I have a puppy. She's not a puppy, she's 11 years old. She likes a lot of attention. So I use my playtime with her also to stretch. An ideal day would be if I didn't have any errands and I could just write and play with my dog and spend time with my family at the end of the day. So
Did you always want to be a writer?
when I was younger, I loved to read, and so I would write my own stories. I didn't think of writing for a living or writing as a career because when I was growing up, that was something you would do as a hobby. Professionally, I didn't think of it until, I was much older. Right now, I feel like I'm living the dream. It was something I never thought would happen. And then when it happened, like randomly, I'll wake up in the morning and I'll think like my life is really good right now. Like this is I'm living my dream. So it's very it's a really great feeling to be able to do something that you were even almost afraid to dream of because you didn't think it was possible. So now that it's happened, it's really amazing. It feels amazing.
That's inspiring to just hear. So many of us have all these dreams which we think we are not allowed to undertake or not go after. So this is definitely inspiring.
And also, like for me, obviously there are writers of all ages, but maybe it's just me. My first book didn't come out until after I turned 50. Like it makes me really happy that I didn't stop or not even try because I was a certain age.
Where do you find inspiration for the stories that you write?
My life, my children, my travels. Like I've lived in a lot of different places, and my own experiences and the experiences I see young people having today, I find it very interesting, and I can compare to my own experiences at that age.
I read your book, The Love and Lies of Ruxana Ali, for a book club during the pandemic. And I really love the character in terms of representation and in terms of how she dealt with whatever was going on in the book. And I am
Thank
very
you.
curious about your new book, Meet Me in Mumbai. Tell me a little bit about that.
A lot of the story is based on how I felt as a newcomer to the States. I was a little bit older than the main character, Aisha, who's 17, I was 26, but I still felt, that homesickness, that loneliness, that sense of isolation when you first move to a new country and you don't really have like a home base. That feeling of, being alone and isolated and feeling that nobody really gets you. I had to really go deep into that feeling, into that time. And so I was imagining the 17-year-old girl coming here and studying and finishing up her high school years and then falling in love with this boy who wasn't really like acceptable, as far as religion and culture is concerned. And she gets pregnant. I really wanted to show how much courage it took for her to make these decisions and to stand by her choices. And I also, in this current climate of abortion bans and the, so many of women's rights are being taken away. I wanted to show that having options is so important. And in her case, she chose to place her baby for adoption, but she also considered the other options because she had them to consider. Not everyone is in the same situation. And so, her story ended up being like the first part is her story where, she makes this decision and then we don't see what happens to her after she leaves because she decides that, after she places her baby for adoption, she can't stay in the country, she has to go back. Also, just I wanted to explore how different these choices are and how much more difficult these choices are if you come from a certain, if you're from a marginalized group, if you come from a certain kind of background. And in her case, she loves her family so much and they love her so much that if she had told them, they would have absolutely taken care of her and helped her and been there for her, but at a very high cost. And she wasn't willing to put her parents through that. It's not that she had to make this choice because her parents were awful people and they would just kick her out of the house or something. It was just an act of love almost for her baby and for her family. And then the second part of it is her daughter, when she's adopted and she has a great life, but she's adopted by two white moms and they're wonderful and they love her, but she just feels that there's a part of her that doesn't quite fit in, and she feels that a part of her is missing. It just pushes her more and more to kind of discover that part of herself. And then with the help of friends and a letter she finds from her birth mother, she ends up going to Mumbai to meet her. I hope people enjoy it.
I look forward to reading it.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot in the book. So I'm curious, how long did it take for you to finish this book?
It took a while, I would say 3-4 months. And I think a lot of it was because we were all stuck inside. It was really hard. Usually it doesn't take me that long to write the first draft. Of course, it takes 2 years from like first draft for everything to be polished and come together, because you do a lot of back and forth with your editor. But just like to write the first draft took me longer because I was having a really hard time staying focused, because there was nothing to do other than write and stay at home. And it was just the mindset. It was such a scary time. Like we were scared of like buying groceries and not wiping, like that was still the time when people were like, oh my God, if you touch, your groceries without like sanitizing them, you might get COVID. So it took a lot longer because it was really hard to focus and stay positive at times. So yeah.
Did you come up with a writing routine for yourself? Does that help you?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to think of it like as a regular job. And so I try to start like at 9 or 10 at the latest in the morning, and I'll write for a couple of hours, take a little break, write for a couple of hours more, take a little break. I write on and off until like 4 or 5 o'clock, like that. And then if something comes up, I make up the time later on too. And it all depends on what part of the process I'm in. And I don't take like weekends off or anything. I still like to do a little bit on the weekends, or sometimes I'll do a lot on the weekends and then have a day in the middle of the week when I'm just not feeling, I'm just not feeling it, and I just can't, like, I'll try, and then if I'm there for an hour and I haven't really written anything, I'll sometimes just walk away and do something else. So overall, like on average, I'll end up writing the amount that I was wanting to write, just not consistently every day at the same time.
Over the course of writing multiple books, would you say your writing has changed?
Yeah, I guess so. I think I care less about what people will think. Like when I was first writing, I was very, very aware, because your first book hasn't come out yet and you have no idea how people will respond. So it's kind of frightening and scary, and you hear what's happening with other authors sometimes. And you're like, oh my God, did I make a mistake, writing about something like this? The response from Ruxana was really positive. I heard a lot of feedback from actual queer Muslim teens who told me how important the book was to them and how much they related to it and how they were happy that I wrote this story. And so that really helps. I mean, hearing from actual people, the people that you're fictionalizing in a book, but also that are based on real people. And it's really amazing to hear that they connected with your story, that it meant something to them, because largely writing is just me sitting in front of my computer and pouring a part of me out into the book, and you don't know how it's going to land, right? Like there's just no way of knowing. And people can interpret anything in any way. I have no control over that. Like I have no control over how people will interpret a certain scene or a certain dialogue or piece of dialogue or something. So all I can do is make sure that I'm not intentionally writing anything harmful, which obviously I don't want to do. But also there are things, I can't guarantee that people are not going to be uncomfortable if they read something, because I mean, my existence makes people uncomfortable sometimes because of the color of my skin, because of my religion, because of my accent. I don't know. I can't help that. And I don't know. I'm at the point in my life where I don't care, because I'm not comfortable with a lot of things and nobody else seems to care about that. It's true. I mean, I've read books about white people in my entire life without ever saying that, oh, like, why are you writing these books? And if somebody doesn't like my book, they can choose not to continue reading it. But I'm not, even if it's just a few people who relate to it, I feel like that's worth it for me to tell these stories. At some point, I realized, okay, I'm not naive. I know that these are things that people may take the wrong way, or they won't like it, they won't appreciate what I'm trying to do. And so I either give up and I don't write those stories, or I just write it and just distance myself and let people make of it what they want. So my writing hasn't changed per se. I think I'm just a little more blunt because my characters, their parents especially, come from like, Pakistani background or Bangladeshi background or Indian background, English is not their first language. So when they communicate with each other and their children, they're peppering their conversations with Urdu or Bengali or Hindi, which is very natural to me because I grew up like that. I do that with my own children. I mean, I speak English, but I also speak Urdu and Bengali. So when I'm talking to my kids, I'll put in, it's just how I grew up. And so I do that a lot more liberally in my writing now, and I don't translate it. I try to explain it as much as I can through context, but I'm not going to repeat something that's the character said in Urdu, but then also repeat it in English or put italics around it or anything like that. I mean, Google exists, people can Google it. I've read books where there have been, sentences, parts of sentences in a different language. I can just Google it and now I've learned something new. I mean, that's
Absolutely.
always
We
a
all
good
do
thing,
that.
right? Right? I mean, it's not that hard. I also have become less conscious of or self-conscious of like how, for example, in The Love and Lies of Roxana Ali, her parents are Bengali for whom English is a second language. They speak Bangla at home. So when they speak English, in their minds, they're sort of translating from Bengali into English and then saying it. So the grammar is a little bit different. And I think that's true of every non-English speaking people, like let's say just in South Asia. I mean, somebody wasn't born speaking English fluently. If they learned it at an older age, they often do that. They'll, the phrasing is slightly different, the grammar is slightly different, the sentence endings are a little bit different. It sounds authentic to me because that's how people I grew up around spoke. That's how they spoke English. They would change a little bit, not consciously, it's just how they speak. And I find that very endearing and charming. I feel like that brings a real authenticity to the character, but also for a reader to read that and try and hear it in their head. I think that's a really great experience as part of reading. Like, you're not just always going to speak the way you think the reader speaks. I was a little bit more careful when I was writing Roxana, but after that, I'm just like, I just stopped filtering that. I make them speak the way my aunts and uncles and grandparents spoke when they spoke in English. And I love it when I watch it, even like in movies and stuff, or nowadays, in shows, and they have a character who is like from South Asian background, but came to the US as an adult. Their English is different, and I love that they don't speak flawless English because
Yeah.
that's not their first language. It doesn't sound, I mean, not that not that somebody can't speak flawless English just because, it's their second language, but you know what I mean, right?
Also, when we read books that are written around like South Asian diaspora or anything that relates to you, right, where you come from, I think I always appreciate it a little more if it's not over explained, like how you said, no
Right?
italics, no
Yeah.
explaining, because that just ruins the flow of reading for me.
Yeah.
I am supposed to be the target audience or something here. I
Yes,
think I really
exactly.
appreciate that authors now are actively not writing for just white audiences, but for
Mhm.
people overall. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, and that's so great to hear because really we do write for you, you know? And I just feel like it's a disservice, really, if you create this character who is supposedly from Bangladesh or from Pakistan, came as an adult, and then speaks like an American when they haven't really lived in America for that long, when they have been speaking English in Pakistan or in Bangladesh for all of their lives in that certain way, with that certain cadence and the certain, grammar and expressions as well, right? Like just certain expressions they don't translate well, but people who know, they know. And so it's so much more fun to write the characters like that because those are in my head, those are real people, or at least they're based on real people that I've known all my life. And I enjoy watching them, and I enjoy books where they're portrayed like that. So I can only imagine that readers would enjoy that a lot more. So that's great to hear.
Any advice you would have for budding writers out there?
Don't give up. Like, just don't worry. Just shut out all the voices that tell you that you shouldn't be doing it, you can't do it, and nobody will care. I listened to a lot of it. Luckily, I've somehow managed to shut it all out because I was so close to not writing the book at all. I was so close to giving up because I felt like, well, who's going to care about this kind of character? Like, there's nobody is writing this. So clearly there's no market for it. And gatekeepers. I've heard all my life a lot of them saying that, oh, you should publish in India. I'm not even from India, but somehow in their minds they feel that these kinds of stories are only interesting to people from India, and so I should just go and publish there. Like, why am I trying to publish this strange book, this strange story here? Like, who would care? And so This was early on, obviously not recently. This was like in 2013, 2012, 2013. And it's so discouraging when you haven't started your journey yet and already you're getting this negative feedback. I had to keep telling myself, you know what? I have nothing to lose. I mean, if I give up now, I have everything to lose. And I'm so glad I didn't, because I would never have had these opportunities. And I'm so happy that I get to write these stories. And I really want to tell anyone out there, first of all, age is not a thing. It doesn't matter. Like, if you have it in you, if you're 70 years old, if you're 60, if you're 24, it doesn't matter. Like, if it's a story you're going, if it's the stories inside you, just put it out on paper. Put it down on paper. Don't worry about it being perfect. It's not going to be. I mean, I'm writing my 5th book now, and it's a mess, because it's meant to be like that. It's just me putting out all my stories. Like, they're all like, nothing makes sense, the plot is ridiculous, the names keep changing, timeline is a mess. But that's all stuff that can be fixed later. And because now I've gone through the editing process, the whole process with my editor now, on my 4th book, I realized that none of that really matters. But when you're a first time writer, of course you do kind of panic and you're like, oh my God, this is awful. But then, you can share it with people you trust that will give you, constructive criticism and constructive feedback. And so anything but giving up. There are times when you do have to put something away because you just feel like this is not the right time, and that's absolutely fair. But just put it down on paper and then you can fix it. But if you don't have anything to fix, then you're never going to have your book. Just really don't let any of the negativity in. And if it comes in, just process it and then move on. Because I mean, ultimately, who is anyone to tell you that you shouldn't write this story, or that you shouldn't tell this account or that, whether it's a short story or poem, whatever it is. I mean, it's an expression of your creativity, right? It's your story, and you have a right to tell it. And the people will find you. Like, when it's out there, you'll find the story will find the reader will find the story. I really believe that.
What are you working on next?
So I'm working on this really fun story, another young adult contemporary. It's sort of my take. It's not announced yet or anything. It's my take on the movie What a Girl Wants, where this girl, her father's not in her life, and so she wants to reconnect with him. And so she does that. And her father is sort of a royal in India. And so she just goes and basically makes a big mess of everything. And it's a rom-com. It's a little bit of a rom-com. So it's a little bit on a lighter side than my previous 3 books, but I'm really enjoying it. It's fun. It has drama, and it has a lot of Desi drama, Desi family drama, which I just love. So that'll come out next summer. So I'm hoping I can share a cover soon. It's so beautiful. I love it. I love the cover.
If you were to be deserted on an island with only 3 books, which books would you take?
So currently I'm really loving Shannon Chakrabarty's books, the series, The City of Brass. That's the first book. And then there's 2 more. I've only read the first one. I haven't had time to read the other one. So I guess I would take the second and the third of that, which is Empire of Gold and Kingdom of Copper. It's a trilogy. And it's just all about gin, and it's just so beautiful. Like, the first one was so beautiful. I can't wait to really like sink into it. And the third one, Jen Cervantes writes for the Rick Riordan imprint, and she's written the Storm Runner series, and I've also only read the first one, and I loved it so much. So I would take her, the remaining of her trilogy. That's more than 3.
If you were to pick an interesting life experience or a story to share with us, what would you tell us?
I moved from Bangladesh to Macau to go to university there. There was an American university there, and it's just a little island that used to be like a Portuguese colony until 1999. But I went way back in 1986 to 1988. Almost nobody spoke English. I didn't speak Cantonese or Portuguese. It sounds like it would be a hard experience, but it wasn't. It was just such an adventure. And I was only 18, 19 at the time. It was a very different culture. At the same time, it wasn't scary or anything. It was just such a wonderful experience being independent. And, like, just as a child of Desi parents who were like really, really very protective, and I led a very sheltered life. That was the first time I got to be by myself. Like I just got to live by myself. And we were in a dorm, but no parents, no relatives, no one. And it was so thrilling to live by myself. And even though sometimes it was hard because, it was just a language thing and everything and just kind of figuring out, I'd never done laundry before by myself. It was that bad. Like I was so pampered. I'd never done laundry before. So just figuring out stuff like that, which sounds so silly now when I think back. But at the time, when I think back on my life, that was like the most fun I had those 2 years because the area was very safe and you could just go out whenever. Nobody was checking. There was no curfew. And it was such a fun time in my life that I really cherish that memory. I really cherish that I got to experience that. And I don't know what the point is that I'm trying to make. I think maybe just that, it's such a privilege to have the chance to have an adventure in your life. I meet a lot of people that have never left their town, their city. And of course, I understand that, it's a privilege to be able to travel and things like that. But it's just, I feel like I would want everyone who can to just kind of, take a chance when you're young to have this sort of experience where, you're immersing yourself in something very new and different than what you're used to. And it's just so worth it. And yeah, of course, I mean, if it's possible, then it's great. And if it's not, there are so many other ways to have those experiences living right where you are, I guess, right? It's trying something new and stuff. So I guess, yeah, the point I was trying to make is that it's one of the memories I have of my life that they still bring me joy, just remembering how excited and thrilled I was at the time.
Thank you, Sabina, for sharing with us. Before we end our chat today, if listeners want to buy your book or get in touch with you, how can they do that?
My Twitter is Sabina_writer, and so is my Instagram. And my website is sabina-khan.com. So, you can find all my links and all the information for ordering books and stuff like that on there.
Thank you so much. And I wish you the best of luck with your book.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad we got to do this. And I just had such a good time.